Malacanang downplays calls for a revolutionary government, which a group says will help fast-track a federal system. But some officials, lawmakers, and lawyers question the sudden push for federalism amid this health crisis. Let's hear more from lawyer Michael Yusingco, a research fellow at the Ateneo School of Government. He joins us now from Melbourne, Australia. Attorney, thank you so much for joining us. Before we get into this petition, this idea of a revolutionary government, this comes also amid this incident in Jolo, which killed at least 14 people. Could these events be interconnected in some way?
First, good evening, Rico, and thank you for having me. To answer your question, I think it's too early to tell if what happened in Jolo is connected to this rev-gov movement. I think it would be premature for us to make any connections, but certainly the timing is curious. But just by talking about the incident itself, this is really one of the dire developments in terrorism in our country. Now that we're experiencing suicide bombings, whereas before this was seen as an impossibility in the Philippines. But beginning in 2018, we've seen I think 3 events now that of suicide bombings, and this is a very, very serious development as far as terrorism is concerned in our country.
Going now to the issue of the revolutionary government, which is being floated by a group which is supporting President Rodrigo Duterte. I read an article that you wrote way back in 2017, and as early as 2015, the president has already been floating this idea. Why hasn't he pushed it of late, you think, attorney?
Because it's really a very unpopular unpopular alternative. There really can be no public acceptance about on rev-gov. We have a phobia with any movement that will lead to authoritarianism and dictatorship. Our experience under Marcos in the 70s under his dictatorship really has given us an aversion to any proposal that will lead to a dictatorship.
But attorney, the supporters of President Duterte who are pushing for this rev-gov may be comparing their concept to the rev-gov that installed then President Cory Aquino after the EDSA One People Power Revolution.
Yes, that's I think one of their biggest mistakes, because that situation, medyo may edad na tayo, so we know what happened during that time. President Cory Aquino wasn't actually, well, to be technical about it, when you talk about rev-gov kasi, you really overthrow the existing structures. That's really the nature of the rev-gov. So there's a revolution that precedes it, and then the government that replaces the existing one is totally different from what it replaced. But in the time of President Cory, that didn't happen actually. She issued a General Order number 3, I think, or number 1, which basically said that they will just continue with what President Marcos had, which is a constitutional government, although it was a constitutional dictatorship because the president exercised both executive and legislative power, but the courts were still open, government was still running. So I wouldn't really characterize that short period between 86 and the ratification of the 1987 Constitution as strictly speaking, a rev-gov.
But for them
Certainly,
to push it now, attorney, they must believe that they have legal, factual, practical, and moral basis to push for a rev-gov under the present circumstances.
Well, that's the funny thing about this, because we have to respect what they believe in, because this is really just an exercise of their freedom of speech and freedom of expression. But unfortunately, their idea or their reasons that support their proposal for a rev-gov, it has been refuted and rebuked many times the past week. So their interpretation of what happened in 1986, as well as the grievances they
Right.
air now, it doesn't match.
So, so
The solutions they propose is not fit for the problems that
So,
we're experiencing
attorney,
now.
supporters of President Duterte in the Senate and in the cabinet have already denounced this idea of a revgov. Why haven't we really heard from the president saying, let's stop this, let's put an end to this? And even his supporters in Congress, in the lower house, haven't really come out to say, let's stop all this talk.
That's a very good point to raise, Rico. No? But with regards to the president, actually, well, we haven't heard from him in a long time. So
Oh,
that's really a floating question. We don't know the answer to that. Why hasn't he come out and forcefully denounced this movement, right? But the
right.
problem is we haven't heard from him in a long time. So I do not know what's happening with regards to the president. But with regards to the members of the House, I don't. I'm not surprised that they haven't denounced this movement
Mm-hmm.
because from what I gather from them, I don't think they care with what the public thinks anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're
Right.
fully really just behind what the president says.
Correct.
So whatever the president says, they will just follow. So this public sentiment
Mm-hmm.
against this revgov movement, I don't think it will move them at all.
Correct.
So
Okay.
I'm not surprised that they have none of them, or even some of them, have denounced this movement forcefully.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Final Word and for your insights, Attorney Michael Yusingco, Senior Research Fellow at the Ateneo School of Government.